Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, this is Tammy Pantzer, and I'm really happy to introduce you to Janet Vasil of YourMediaMoment.com. Janet is a brand journalist, video producer, and digital media strategist who helps knowledge professionals, especially medical, health, and wellness experts, use online media content to get seen, get heard, and get clients. Today, Janet is going to be talking to us about the following topic. Don't beg the media. Become the media. How to shine online for visibility, credibility, and profitability. You're going to want to take notes. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Tammy, for that lovely introduction, and thank you for inviting me to your show.
I'm really excited because you have such a phenomenal background. So tell me more about your business and how you got started.
Alrighty. I began coaching and consulting around 2007. And initially, I was doing media training for executives because my background is in radio and television. I was more than 30 years starting in radio in the Boston area, and then 25 plus or more as a television anchor, reporter, and producer. And so as I saw the growth of the online equivalents, if you will, of audio and video, and that regular folks wouldn't have to come through gatekeepers like me. Regular folks could put their message out directly. I started to shift my focus to help them recognize their message and to use the tools that were becoming available, the YouTubes of the world, the audio, the podcast, to get their message out. And so what I say is, I help experts create and leverage digital media so that they can become the media. They don't have to wait for people in traditional media to find them, reach out to them. They don't have to pitch traditional media. If they get interesting and juicy content out there, all of their own, they'll not only attract their ideal clients, but they'll attract traditional media too, because when journalists see something going on, they want to report on it. So you're pulling them in. I heard someone say the other day, it's reverse marketing. It's not pushing it out, it's pulling them in.
So reverse marketing or pulling them in, like you said. So you say become the media. So can you explain a little bit more about how do you
Sure.
become the media?
Every business today that has a website, social media presence, anything online is potentially a publisher or a broadcaster, and they have the power to put their message out directly to the audience that they want to talk to. Again, it's not waiting for the magazine article. It's not waiting for a TV or radio interview, which would be traditional media. And I'm not against traditional media at all. If you get the call from them, go for it. That's big publicity. But you can be your own publicist and be putting out the content, becoming a resource, becoming the media in your niche. People would come to your website or come to your Facebook page or see your blab or whatever it is because you're giving them the goods.
That's really interesting because I've heard that, and it's, even though I've been in media myself for many, many years, I was talking to Brian G. Johnson the other day. He's the author of a book called Trust Funnel. And then you, Janet, you said the same thing about publishing. And there is an even playing field now because, like you said, ordinary people can publish on Facebook or in social media platforms and YouTube. And I think that's really a good point that you bring out, because some people, I don't think they get that they can become their own media player. So how do you help people, and who do you help?
Well, I say it's knowledge professionals. And what I mean is coaches, consultants, speakers, authors, people with subject matter knowledge that have a service business. And I particularly like to work with medical health and wellness people, that niche, if you will, or niche, depending what part of the country you come from, because I spent 12 years in medical news. I was traveling the country doing medical news feature stories for, dozens and dozens of TV stations. They were syndicated out. And so I went to all the major hospitals and big professional organizations that were doing interesting things in health and wellness and medical news. So that's an area that's close to my heart. I love storytelling in that niche. And honestly, it's such news you can use, even if an individual doesn't have this health problem, or they know someone, or they get a better understanding when they meet someone who has Parkinson's disease, or understands a new study that's come out about taking care after a heart attack, that sort of thing. It's a wonderful niche.
That's really interesting. This is kind of just an aside. What was your favorite medical story that you actually covered?
Favorite medical story. I mean, there are so many. And, over 12 years, when you're putting out 5 a week, that's a lot. Let me think of one. Often, believe it or not, the ones that touch people's hearts the most are the ones that involve animals. So if you did a piece that had a service dog, or went to a nursing home, or had an animal that came and sat with people. I mean, there was one I remember now also with music therapy that was very interesting. I think it was at Johns Hopkins, where they had a big music therapy program, and people who were unresponsive in other ways, talking with their family, talking with the nurses, somehow came alive from music.
Wow.
Oh, I just thought of another one. Oh, this is one I actually have on my portfolio. It just came to me. This was a study in Boston. It was at Beth Israel Hospital, I believe. They were helping people who had had a stroke and lost the ability to speak learn to speak by singing, because the brain, where your speech areas are, is different from where your singing areas are. And so if someone could sing, they couldn't say happy birthday, but if they could sing happy birthday, over time with speech therapy, they could learn to sing, speak, and then eventually drop the sing part of it and speak again. Wow, is that powerful?
That is extremely powerful. And what you've just done with those examples is give some really great visual and audio ideas to people who may be thinking, well, what would I talk about if I was on the media? And you just told them, I mean, think about it. If you are a knowledge professional or in the medical field, you witness miracles on a daily basis.
Yes.
So you have plenty of stories to tell. So what do you think are some of the reasons why people don't use the media or don't become the media when it is accessible? Often it only takes time and a cell phone or a smartphone now.
I think there are two aspects. There's a tech phobia, which is, it's going to be too difficult. And as you say, it only takes a phone. It only takes a laptop. I mean, with things like Periscope or whatever, you can get out there. And then there's a confidence phobia, where you're thinking, oh, I don't have anything to say, or I don't know what to say, or I have a face for radio, or whatever. It's a fear factor. Or I do get people who say to me, well, my business doesn't have any stories. Here I am, a brand journalist. I do stories for businesses, but not necessarily about the business. It's an awareness, a visibility thing, and enhancing their stature online. And they'll say, well, what do we have to say? There aren't any stories. And I can sit down with them and go through a small exercise and we can come up with dozens of stories. Because I'm a journalist and that's my background, and so is yours, we see stories where people do not.
Yeah, we were actually paid to see what other people
Yeah.
don't see for many, many years. I just find this issue or this topic so fascinating because you mentioned a couple things. People, they don't like the way they sound. They don't like the way they look. They don't think they have anything relevant to say.
Yep.
Yet we know everyone has multiple stories to tell. If they are alive or have lived, they have stories to tell and they have a message to share, especially if they've had, let's say, I've heard this phrase a few times recently, messes that turn into messages.
Make your message. Yes, I've heard that
because
too.
I've heard some just awe-inspiring stories about loss and pain and resilience that I'm just like, whoa, my story.
It's so inspiring. It's so motivating for other people. Because we've lived it, we discount the value to others.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to ask you about when you work with people at your media moment. Can you kind of describe how you might work with someone so that they could realize the value of their story? And then how would you help them to get that message out so that other people can appreciate that?
Well, I think I can go in two directions. I have a virtual team that helps me, but one direction is it's people want to do it themselves. And so we can have kind of a consulting conversation or two or however many we need to get a content strategy to figure out what stories you have and how you're going to tell them. I mean, you can have written stories, you can have audio stories, you can have photo essays, you can have video done or do it yourself. And so that way we can just talk about who you are, what your business is, what value do you bring to your clients. And now let's shape some stories so that other people can appreciate that and understand, particularly in the medical health and wellness area. Patient success stories or client success stories are very powerful and they can be used print, audio, or video, where it's more than a testimonial because it's in the sense where Mary Jones says, I had a baby and I struggled to get the weight off and I did everything I could and it just was, and now you, the client, coach so-and-so, helped Mary Jones get on the right track and now she's back to her pre-baby body and she's so happy. And it's like a testimonial, but it's more because within that story, you're going to give the hints and the tips and the clues that woman used to achieve her result.
Oh, that's a really good example because as you were saying that, I saw the post-pregnant body.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then I saw it evolve into the beautiful body, because like you said,
Lots of women struggle with that. That's just a big one.
description. So what kind of results can people expect to get when they start to become the media?
When my folks have online magazine feature articles about them and audio interviews about them and videos and online press releases and perhaps publish their own book as a big business card, this sort of thing, they get more visible, they get more credible. And I've had one client who has appeared on traditional TV many times. She's a registered dietitian and a holistic health gourmet cook type of thing. And so she has all kinds of videos teaching people how to do this sort of thing. She has a pretty good sized YouTube channel and traditional media saw that and came to her. She's also herself written for some major magazines, print magazines in the health area. So, I mean, she's done a lot with her online content to attract a wider audience. And I have another client who put together a video training program. She's in the wellness area. She's a wellness consultant, and her training program and her work promoting that training program attracted a number of good-sized corporate prospects who wanted to incorporate her program into their human resources program. So I'm very thankful to have had those clients, and I'm very pleased to see how their bigger footprint, their stronger presence online led to more success for them.
I think that's really interesting because when you're talking about the health and wellness field, those people often do not have how do I say it, a marketing sense.
Right. They're great at
Because
what they do. Yeah.
yeah, because they're so heart centered and they're so focused on helping people that they often don't even see that value in how they can turn that into marketing for themselves. And then, of course, creating a real business from that actually does more than just help them scrape by. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions about using digital media positioning?
Sometimes I have run across people who they want more clients, they want a bigger audience, but they're still not sold on this online thing yet. I mean, they say,
Facebook is a fad.
right, or, well, I'm a very private person. If they're a solo entrepreneur, for example, honey, you got to get over that. I'm sorry, but if marketing means getting out there a little bit, you don't have to reveal everything about your own life, but look at what you've done for clients and talk to people about what you can do for them and get that in the online space, because it's low cost and no cost marketing. I mean, why would you put up a billboard and spend what you have to spend for that if you could every day be going out and giving little tidbits about what you do and attracting the people who you want to work with? So that's one common misconception, that, it will reveal too much about me and my privacy will be invaded. And I think there are certainly ways around that, positioning yourself as a professional and as a person in business. You don't have to talk about your dog and your husband and your 27 children. You don't have to worry about that. You can leave that out of the conversation. Of course, that'd make a really good story if you had 27 children.
Well, yeah. Well, we know that if you have 19 and counting, that'll
you make it a heartbeat.
But I think that's really interesting because there's this perception, I guess, that when you're well known in the online world, that transfers into the real world. And I know that I live in a small town and most people have no idea who I am.
Yes.
Yet people
Yes.
in my
field,
little world, they know who I am.
And that's the point. It's positioning to be outstanding in your field. It's not to be, run for Congress and be outstanding to the whole voting public. It's to be recognized for what you do.
Right. One time I did go to Home Depot and a guy did recognize me. He goes, "You're Tammy Patzer. You do online training. I watched your training." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, it was funny because he worked at Home Depot. And so it was just one of those bizarre encounters. So,
and of course, I could tell you from the other side because I was a local TV anchor. So, I mean, I literally couldn't go anywhere.
Oh, yeah. I dated.
And invariably, you're picking spinach out of your teeth and somebody's saying, "Oh, you're Janet Vasil. I watched your show every night."
Yes.
Okay.
I dated a news anchor and we'd go out to dinner and we would just be, a local celebrity.
Signed autographs, which I think are kind of silly because I'm nobody. I'm just a person who picked a public business. But I've signed autographs while I was at a brunch one time at a very fancy place because I was recognized.
Well, but that, I think we're laughing about it because obviously the thing about online is that, as you stated earlier, was that it levels the playing field and no longer do you have to have the gatekeeper to allow you to get exposure. You can take control of that. And yes, it is still wonderful to get that third person credibility from the local news,
traditional news, sure,
or TV or radio. But at the same time, you can become the media. Like you said, you can write a book. You can become a bestseller. You can write a blog or share all of this on social media, but you need somebody like you
to
who
shape the
can,
strategy.
yeah,
That's what we do. And sometimes, of course, we execute the strategy as well. So it could be one way or the other.
right,
And that's valuable to people because they won't even see their stories sometimes. They don't.
right.
The famous, I don't want to be on TV, and that's fine. If you don't want to be on TV, I don't pitch traditional media for people. I do digital media positioning. But if traditional media comes calling, you'll be prepared.
Right. And I think that's really important. So, what would you say is your secret sauce that sets you apart from other people doing similar things? Because I know actually nobody actually, you are way up there, because of your background.
I
So,
think that's part of it. It's that, as we said earlier, the journalism background lets you find the stories and help people shape really good stories from their existing content. And having the professional background of how to present yourself with impact, either with audio or with video. Those two are my what sets me apart. That's my unique selling proposition, I guess. That I come from traditional media and I am taking what I know to help you use online media in the most effective way.
so can you kind of, if you were going to work with me, for example, hint, hint,
Mhm.
what would let's say the first few things that we would do, what would they be?
We would start out by looking at your existing footprint online and all of what you have there and making sure that all your social media profiles were up to date, that the photos were up to date, that if you have a blog, it's up to date, that everything is consistent. So often you find people who have done one thing over here and said something else over there. And if anybody Googles you, that has to be consistent. If you're, a horse trainer over here and a rodeo star over there, it's like, well, which one is he? Is he both? Okay, let's see it all together. So we'd make sure that there was a consistent image across all Googleable properties, if you will. And then we would talk about your goals and what is it that you want? Who is your target audience? How are you trying to reach them? Where can we find them? What do they like? Because that's the other thing that maybe is part of the secret sauce. I care about the audience. People who are in business so often say, well, I'm going to put out content about me and about what interests me. And you're not going to get the audience with that. You've got to figure out what interests them because it's a what's in it for me world. And people will be attracted when it serves them and will be turned off if it's self-serving. So if it's buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, you're going to have crickets. You're not going to get any.
I think that's really, really important, what you just said there, because it is about the audience and what the audience wants. And I just interviewed Joel Bogus of Relaunch, and that is exactly what he said when I asked him about how did you come up with your podcast? And he said, well, I asked the audience,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
did surveys. And I think that's really important. Like what you said, so people get so into it's about me, and no, it's not about you at all. It
No.
really is about the audience, and do you provide a solution to their problem? And are you, providing it in I guess, an edutainment kind of way, because we're so
Yeah.
used to that. Is it
That's the way media is.
educational and entertaining? And I think that's something that you bring to the table, is because of that professional radio and television experience, you actually could tell somebody, no, that's not a good angle for a story because it doesn't have a sizzle or a pop, or
Right,
it's
right.
not timely.
Or
It doesn't have a
serve them.
hook.
It's not
Yeah.
something that would serve, it's self-serving. And I mean, I have this sometimes when I work with media training for individuals. Some people, it's all about, well, how do I look and how do I sound and how am I coming across? And the reality is, your charisma is your confidence looking through the lens or behind the microphone when you care about the other guy, when you're outer directed. That's where people pick up and resonate with you, not when you're so Oh my, I look this way, or I look, that stuff turns everybody off. But there are people who, over many years in television and having people come in and come out who were talent like me, the ones that were the best reporters were the ones who were outer directed, who cared about getting the information for their audience and serving the audience well. And it wasn't all about, I'm going to put myself in every single frame of this story. And it's, I'm going to get to a bigger market because everything's going to be about me, me, me. At least that's what my experience was. The outer directed is the way to attract people. Self-involved is the way to just have you, yourself, and you, right, and nobody else involved.
That's funny because that reminds me when I was a newspaper editor for a local town. It was called Northport, and my mantra was Northport, Northport all the time. And I always called my readers my people, and I was always explaining to the reporters and photographers that they had a responsibility to their people.
Yes. It's service, serving the people, to get the facts, to get it to be accurate, to serve people. Yeah, that's exactly the mindset, the focus that I hope to encourage my business peeps when I talk to them to adopt.
Your peeps, because
they're always thinking, well, if I want to sell this widget, I've got to tell them there's a big sale on the widget. And with digital media positioning, we're not doing that. We're getting you to be the attraction. So, there's time for people to be attracted to you and find out more about you and what you do and find out that you sell this kind of widget. That's great. But the positioning, the authority that you're using this media and this content to engender is not about buy my stuff.
Right. That's really interesting. I also wanted to make a comment about the energy that people exude when they're being helpful, because I can feel it over the airwaves. Even when I talk and interview people, I can feel that electrical energy, and I know if they're sincere or not over the airwaves.
Yep. And that's very important. I had someone call me last night, and I couldn't take the call, and they left a message. And I thought, how are they calling me to make a business connection? It was kind of, hello, I'm so-and-so. So-and-so recommended that I call you. Give me a call back. I was like, why would I want to?
Well, you know what? I think they need you. That person, they need you. And that's why somebody recommended that they contact you. Because it's obvious they need you, because there's,
just not presenting themselves professionally. They're not presenting themselves as the expert that they probably are. They might be helping people left and right and have a fabulous approach to their business. But if they can't present themselves, as you say, with the energy, with the passion that lets people know, I'm here to help you, I want to serve, that's just going to not attract anyone.
I think that's a really important tip that you just gave, was that you have to have energy and you have to show your passion. I think that you just hit the nail on the head on that. So why would you think that different people or clients would, number one, why would they choose to work with you? And secondly, if they decide not to work with you, why do you think that would be?
Generally, they would choose to work with me because they've seen some content I've put out, or I've spoken somewhere, or we've had a one-on-one networking conversation, and they resonate with me. This is a world where not everybody resonates with other people. And so what's that expression? It's not what you say, it's the music you play. So my music may not appeal to everybody else in terms of my personality, the way I express myself. And this is why you get out in the media the way you do online, so that you do find the people who say, oh man, I love the way she explained that, or she just sounds so knowledgeable. That kind of thing is how you attract people. And I think that's why someone would work with me, because they get the confidence that I'm in it for them and that I will work as hard as I possibly can to get them the results that they choose to get, that we work together to decide they want to achieve. On the other side, not working with me, again, it may come back to a fear factor because I do audio and video. That's pretty much my main skill set. Although, sure, I could have a conversation with you, record it, and make articles and that sort of thing. So some people may just not be ready to perform, if you will. The audio and video just is an uncomfortable space for them, and they would rather not go there right now. That doesn't mean they might not come back to me later, or they might go to someone else once they get more comfortable with presenting themselves that way.
I think you're absolutely right. I think fear is a huge factor, and feeling not ready, even though if you or I looked at them, we would say, you're ready. You were probably ready a long time ago. And it is to just step out and fly. It reminds me of my son. Back when he was 8 years old, I took him to a Young Eagles program where they take little kids up in those little airplanes so they can get the experience of flying. Mm-hmm. So my son looked at me, he goes, I don't want to go. And I said, just go sit in there. And if you don't like it, come out. So he went into the airplane. And he got in, and, the guy gave him the headset, and they strapped in and everything. And my son Kent had this blank stare. He just looked at me like, Mom, what are you doing to me? And I couldn't read it. It wasn't really fear, but it wasn't happiness either. So I waved and off he flew. And I actually wrote about this when I was a newspaper editor, and I saw what I wrote, and I wrote, Kent was going to fly like an eagle, whether he wanted to or not. And I think that's the perfect metaphor, because it's like...
He probably came back and said he was okay with it, or he enjoyed it, right? He loved it. Okay,
he went up again, and he went up again right away. But I think that little story is an example of how many of us are. It's like, I'm afraid. Go sit in the seat. Just get in front of the video camera. Just put on the headset and let's start talking. Okay. And you're
I think
scared.
When I was a young reporter, just starting out, you had to learn to turn on the mic or to stand in front of the camera. And I felt the same way, like, oh gosh, I'm not really comfortable with doing this. But for me, it was, well, I have a responsibility. I have to get out there and find the story and get the facts straight and tell the audience. And you get over it. The more it's a practice makes perfect kind of world. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get with how you sound, the more comfortable you get with how you look. I always tell people, I'm sure Brad Pitt didn't like the way he looked or sounded the first time he saw himself on video. I mean, it's just a natural reaction, but it doesn't mean that you can't get over it.
Yeah, and many actors say they don't watch themselves.
Yes, that's
right. Because they don't want to have to deal with
second guessing themselves and their performance. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I really think that you've given, number one, we've had a fun conversation, but in our conversation, I think you've really made a lot of really solid and valid points about why somebody should become the media, because it is time. It's your time. And it just makes sense to me that if you are afraid, I think Tony Robbins said, if you're afraid, you must, something like that. And I think that it just makes perfect sense that if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, why not work with Janet? Because she is a professional and she can tell you, hey, it's okay, and walk you through and ask you questions. And believe me, I know from experience, for example, when I first started doing these podcasts, I was scared. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I've interviewed people before, but not over and over again, not like Janet, who's president.
Thousands of people, including US presidents, yes.
So I was a little bit intimidated by the fact that there were so many people out there who had so much more experience than I did. But I did it anyway, and now I feel more and more comfortable. So I know I'm a walking example of somebody who flew like an eagle, whether they wanted to or not. And of course, just think of the learning curve. If you have someone like Janet who's coaching you through how to talk, how to answer questions, how to develop your story, you cut all of probably years off of your learning
the personal
curve.
struggle. Yeah, I mean, you can do it yourself, but it's nice to have that outside party. And I will give the tip that almost always we are much more critical and much harder on ourselves than anybody in the audience ever is. I'm sure you've had the experience. I've given a speech and I've thought, oh, I didn't really give them as much as I wanted or whatever. And then people come up after the speech and say, oh, I loved your presentation. Thank you so much. I really got some good golden nuggets. You're thinking to yourself, they did? Because, you're hard on yourself.
Yeah, and that is something I think is really important is quit looking to be perfect and just do it. Just start. Just do something. So I wanted to ask you, Janet, what 3 steps could someone take right after this show, immediately, to get started with digital media positioning?
I would say sit down to figure out what existing content you have and how you can repurpose your content. And I just heard something the other day that really simplifies, what's my story? What kind of content can I create or repurpose? And it's 3 things: head, heart, hands. Head means, what can I put out there that's thought leadership, that comments on something that's happening in my industry? For example, LinkedIn being bought by Microsoft the other day. Well, if you're a LinkedIn expert, maybe you would want to comment on what you see as the future for these two working together. Heart is, of course, the heartwarming stories, as we spoke about earlier, the patient success story, the case study where someone went from 0 to hero. And hands are the how-to type stories, which everybody loves. If you go to YouTube, it's just chock full of how to this and how to that, no matter what it is. How to collect rocks, you probably find a story about it. So what kind of content to create? What kind of stories to tell? Think head, heart, hands.
Triple H, head, heart, hands. Janet, where can people find out more information about you and your services?
They can come on over to my yourmediamoment.com website, and there they'll find a wealth of information about what I do and how I do it. And of course, you can always contact me through there with my booking form, and we can have a conversation.
Perfect. Thank you, Janet. I really, really enjoyed our conversation today, and I want to formally invite you back another time where we can talk about more authority marketing topics and how to help people create their media moment.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I would be delighted to come back again. This has been a lot of fun.
This is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.